We are now moving on to our October template. This is going to be an 8.5 by 11, and I'm going to show you how you can make your own paper out of cardstock and also using designer series paper. Now on this particular template, it's 8.5 by 11. So you want to have the 11-inch side, you want to have that at the top of your cutting tray. And you're going to cut at 3.5 inches because your 8.5 will be going down, correct? So your 11 is over here, 8.5 is here. So you're going to cut at 3.5 inches for your first cut, and you'll cut 2 of those by 4 3/4, and then that leaves you the 4 3/4 by 1.5. Your second cut will be at 4 by 3.5, so you're going to cut at 4, and then again at 4.5, and then this one is 4 by 3.5, and then this one is 4.5 by 3 1/4, and you can leave it at 3.5 if you want. And that's what this part is, but I had it cut down to 3 1/4. And then the last piece will leave you with 2 2 3/4 squares, and then the last piece will be 3 inches by 2 3/4. Show you how I'm going to take a 12 by 12 piece of designer paper, and we're going to cut it down to 8.5 by 11. And so let's go ahead and open this up. Now when we do it this way, you're going to have extra pieces that you can use, right? I'm going to move this 12 by 12. We're going to move it down to 11 inches, a 1-inch piece. Now you can cut this in half, or cut it at 5.5 inches or 5 1/4, and then you can use this as a strip, or you can flip it over on the back to use it as a strip on another card. Okay, so I'm going to turn this because that's our 11-inch, right? So now we need an 8.5. So I'm going to bring this over here to 8.5. All right, so now I have a 3.5-inch piece. So this one you can also use. So this is our 8.5 by 11. 11 is going to be at the top. Now we want to cut, the first cut according to our template is going to be at 4 3/4, because then our 3.5's going down and we'll add up to our 8.5, which is down, right? So we're going to cut this at 4 3/4, which is right there. All right, so we're going to cut that at 4 3/4. Now we're going to turn this, and according to the template, we're going to cut 2 at 3.5, and then we're going to cut 3.5 again. And then that leaves us our 1.5 piece as well. All right, so that we have our 2, 3.5 by 4 3/4, 3.5 by 4 3/4, and 1.5 by 4 3/4. Okay, so we're going to set that off to the side. Now we're going to cut at 3.5 inches, right? This back over here. So this one now we're going to cut at 3.5. Okay, so we're going to go 3.5 inches wide. Get it lined up top and bottom. So we're going to cut at 3.5. Then we're going to turn, and according to our template, we're going to cut one at 4 inches. So let's go ahead and cut at 4, because this is 3.5 by 4, right? And then this one is 4.5. Cut this at 3 1/4. Now you can leave it at 4.5 by 3.5, but let's cut it down to 3 1/4 because that's what our template says. So let's cut it down, and that's going to give us this small strip that you can still use for something else. You can always add that to the inside of your card. All right, so there's our 2 cards on the centerpiece, right? Now we should be left with 2 3/4 square, and then that should leave us a 3-inch piece by 2 3/4. And then what we can do is, and then we can take this piece here, which is 11. We could do a 3-inch piece, which would be 3 by 3.5. This is where I cut off from the 12 by 12. And then that leaves us with a piece that is 8 inches, and then I'll just cut these in half. So I'll have 2 4-inch pieces. Okay, so we'll have 2 4-inch pieces from the piece we cut off from the 12 by 12. And then this one, I'm going to cut in half it, cut off 1 inch, which we probably will not use because that would be the leftover. These are on the 2 strips that came out of the 12 by 12 pattern paper. Now I designed my paper using the Pretty Pumpkins, and one of the things that you need to do when you're going to design your own paper is you want to stamp everything and try to do everything like in sections of 3 if at all possible. So this is what I've done. I've used the Pretty Pumpkins stamp set and stamped my pumpkins using pumpkin pie light and dark Stampin' Blends as well as our pale papaya, and then I used rainy apple green for the little bit darker green, and then old olive, and crumb cake for our stem. Okay, now we're done. We're back with our cards that we made, and this is just using the 8.5 by 11 template. I did not use the leftover materials as of this time to create more cards, but as you can see, we have enough materials to make 5 more cards. But right now I'm just showing you what I did with the template itself. So this is using Mary Merlot cardstock, and this is cut at 8.5 by 5.5. This piece here is one of our 4 3/4 by 3.5 pieces. So that's in your first column. And then I just cut a circle out and then typed a stamped a sentiment and put that, popped it up on dimensionals. And then this is the second 4 3/4 by 3.5, and the same thing. And then this one is our third piece at 4 3/4 by 1.5 inches. Now this one cut the cardstock at 4 1/4 by 11. Of course, I'll add my white piece on the inside. And again, I used some coordinating cardstock, a soft succulent, and stamped my sentiment in Mary Merlot. And then the next card is the second column, which are 4.5 by 3 1/4. I put a piece of soft succulent behind and did the same thing with my circle punch. And again, this one is cut at 4 1/4 by 11. And then this is my 4-inch piece by 3.5. And again, this is in the second column. And then this particular card base I cut at 8.5 by 5.5. And again, my Whisper Whites, I'll put those in when I'm ready to send these out. Now this is one of the 2 3/4 inch squares. Now I embossed part of the folder using one of our embossing folders. I flipped the paper over to show the back side, which I did on this one as well. And then I made a happy birthday sentiment. And then here's our other 2 3/4 square. And this one I placed a piece of soft succulent behind it and used our evening evergreen ribbon set on a base of 4 1/4 by 11 Mary Merlot. Popped this up on dimensionals and then stamped my sentiment as well. And then this is our last piece, which is the 2 3/4 by 3 inches. And again, the same thing. I put this on a 5.5 by 8.5 card base of evening evergreen, soft succulent base, tied some soft succulent ribbon, and then stamped my sentiment as well. So those are your 8 cards that you'll get from that 8.5 by 11 template. Now I also indicated that where I showed you how to make your own pattern paper. So let me show you the cards that I did with that. This is using the pumpkin pie, Pretty Pumpkin stamp set from Stampin' Up. This is on a pumpkin pie base. I used Very Vanilla, and then I cut this piece. This one is template's a little bit different than what we used there, but I just wanted to show you what I did on these particular cards. I used a piece of pale papaya. This is stamped in pale papaya. This is pumpkin pie Stampin' Blends, and this is olive. And then the sentiment is in soft suede. And again, this is the 8.5 by 5.5 piece there. So you can see when you make your own pattern paper, you can make some really nice designs using the stamps that you have on hand. So there's another example. This is Pear Pizzazz with a piece of pale papaya and then my card on front attached to that. And again, this is all stamped on Very Vanilla cardstock. And then here's another piece. And these are all, most of these are all cut at 4 1/4 by 11. And again, this one's on pumpkin pie with Pear Pizzazz layer and then your Very Vanilla on top. So you can see how you can make your own pattern paper. So if you have a stamp set that you really like, then you can just make your own pattern paper using your cardstock, either white or Very Vanilla, and make your cards using whichever template you want to make. And again, this one is just placed on right on the Pear Pizzazz. And then here's one that is, here's one, let me move this over out of the way. This one is at 4 1/4 by 11, but I turned it sideways. This one, I stamped the sentiment. This is paper, pumpkin pie, and I used the same color ink, and I used this strip right here, and then I stamped the sentiment and popped it out on a circle, added some matte decorative dots. And this is our white crinkled ribbon that you can color with your markers or your Stampin' Blend. So you can really make whatever color ribbon that you'd like. And I use the old olive for that. And then the inside, this is a mistake, so I'm just going to cover that up with my white piece. So there's ways that you can hide your stamp. Here's another one that I did. This is 8.5 by 11. And again, this one 8.5 by 5.5. And that one opens this way. And I stamped the pumpkins in the background, attached my piece of cardstock. I fussy cut out my sentiment and added a few of the matte dots. And then the last one I did is using Pear Pizzazz. And these are two pieces that I placed together and matched up the sentiment. So I staggered them, put some matte dots on there, placed it on a back of Pale Papaya, and then tied a bow using the Pale Papaya ribbon as well on Pear Pizzazz cardstock. So there you can see how you can make your own pattern paper by using any template and stamping your items to see how you can create. So this is just something different, and it's going to be unique to you because no one else is going to have this type of paper in the background, right? So that's using your own pattern paper. And let me bring the cards back in to show you the ones that we made using our template for this month. So this is our template for this month. And I'll just set these out here real quick so you can see them. And these will also be on your template when you start to create yours for examples. All right, thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed this template. If you have any questions or have any other information or anything else that you need, please reach out to me. You can email me at dawn@shallwestamp.com, or you can message me through Facebook, whichever is easier. All right, everyone, thanks again. I hope you've enjoyed this template, and I'll see you next month.